As we are gathered here today, 2 innocent men are in prison in Myanmar for doing nothing more than tell the truth.
Police are targeting well-known critics of the government and detaining them under charges that critics say are trumped up.
The number of journalists in prison is the highest it's ever been. Protesters are being rounded up and arrested. In El Salvador, women were sentenced to 30 years in prison because they had a miscarriage.
She's an award-winning investigative reporter and an outspoken critic of the government. She was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison.
Every opposition leader in the country is now either behind bars or being persecuted by the government.
There are an awful lot of countries that use the judicial system to commit the same crimes that they would, but it gives them this sort of false narrative of being legitimate.
In countries all over the world, governments are using courts to violate people's human rights. The first step is to actually tell the world what's going on.
As a basic principle, everyone is equal under the law. Whether in Colombia, or in Uganda, in the States, or in Australia, the universal application of the law should be the same standard.
We set up TrialWatch because we want to help vulnerable people all over the world whose human rights are being abused through the courts. And that includes journalists, it includes women and girls, it includes, in some countries, gay people and religious minorities, and then a whole host of human rights defenders who are trying to help those communities. We place monitors in courtrooms to shine a light on what's happening, to keep a record of what's happening. We then use legal experts to grade the trial and tell us if it's fair. And then we will work on advocacy where that's needed to bring about a just result in an individual case.
This is my first trial monitoring case. It's a very controversial case in Uganda. I am excited and I am duty bound because the world is watching.
Trial monitoring is having someone in the courtroom who is the eyes and ears of the world.
Was the defendant legally represented? Was the court presiding official impartial? Was the public allowed to enter the courtroom? Were there security officers in the courtroom intimidating the public?
We're really proud to be partnering with the American Bar Association. They have been conducting trial monitoring missions, and under our partnership, they're able to do a lot more of them.
In the capitals of these countries, the international community is there, the diplomats are there, and we're watching. We get into those trials. But when it's an indigenous community and it takes a 6-hour flight and a 6-hour car ride to get to that courtroom, no one's there. And that's where the real nasty stuff goes down. The Clooney Foundation for Justice is shining a spotlight on this in a way that has never happened before.
We are working with Microsoft to develop the app that monitors will use in the courtroom.
Amal and George brought this great focus on the need to make trials fairer. And it was clear that technology needed to be part of the solution.
One of the innovations of the project is to bifurcate the role of the monitor and the person doing the assessment. So the person doing the assessment can be an international lawyer, but we can use local people on the ground to do the monitoring. And they don't have to be lawyers, as long as they go through our training programs. We have partnered with the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and over the last couple of years have been developing a training program with them, codifying what international law says about what the right to a fair trial is and how to be a professional trial monitor. We also have Columbia Law School on board as our academic partner. Some of my students at Columbia Law School have gone out to do trial monitoring in places like Turkey.
But these monitors need to be connected to experts and observers around the world, and technology is the key.
We're gathering the data using the app so that international law experts can then assess the fairness of a trial and give it a grade. Eventually, we will gather enough data that we can help to develop a justice index, which will rank every country in the world according to how fair their judicial system is when it comes to these kinds of trials. This index can then be useful for a number of different actors.
Oftentimes you cannot shame a dictator. But what you can do is shame the people who do business with them.
You know, you can't just say, okay, well, we're going to put you on the Justice Index and that's going to make you feel bad and you'll change your ways, because they don't. But what you can do is make businesses not want to do business with you, and that actually has an effect.
We're trying to work towards having societies where your potential in life is not defined by the colour of your skin or the religion or the gender that you're born into, that governments aren't allowed to abuse those with less power. TrialWatch will be a success when we don't need it anymore, when these types of abuses stop happening.